Time. Ladies and gentlemen, the esoteric author himself, Micah T. Dank. Yes, there he is, right before your very eyes. And tonight we're going to be discussing the book of Revelations, amongst other things. Now, Micah's first, second, third, fourth, fifth book in the series, The Hidden Archives, will be released in just 4 days. And before we get started with the talk on the book of Revelations, and for those of you that are unaware what that book is, it's part of the Bible. Let's talk a little bit about your 5-book series and the last book coming up, and how well is it doing, and what the response is. And we haven't seen each other in a while. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you? You look good.
Yeah, excellent. I love summer. Get a little color.
There you go. The books are doing really well. I just got a royalty check for the last 3 months of sales, and I sold 2,000 copies.
Oh, nice.
And that doesn't include autographed copies that I sign from my home and mail out to people. That was probably another 1,000. So it's selling, and it's doing well. And the information is good. People are buying it up. People are loving it. People are reaching out to me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, just talking about it, just wanting to talk and tell me how it's like helped them and saved them and all this stuff. It's been wild.
Yeah, so I didn't tell you, Micah, you can get Micah on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and he even has a special public group on Facebook that I'm showing you now, Micah Dank Into the Rabbit Hole series, where people that read his books get to interact with Micah quite easily. In fact, you answer almost all of your emails and all that stuff, don't you?
I answer everyone. Anyone that reaches out to me, I talk to every single person.
I do the same. Now, do you have any, for those that have read the first 4 books, what's coming up in the 5th book? And is it the end does it bring it all together, or is there a 6th book? I don't remember. I think it was a 5-book series, correct?
The sixth book comes out September 15th.
Okay.
And there might be a 7th book too. I haven't decided if I'm going to write it yet. Well, actually, that's a lie. I have decided I'm going to write it yet, but I'm just pushing around ideas and stuff. But yeah, it's going to continue. The 5th book is about the Library of Alexandria and what happened to it.
Oh, that sounds fascinating. And
so without going into
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's jump right into the book of Revelations. And what is it that you wanted to bring to us tonight to explain to the people better the book of Revelations? And I'm showing here some of the depictions from the book of Revelations and the symbology with the horsemen and the swords and the dragons. So what is it that you bring to the table, Micah, about the book of Revelations?
So what I have to do first is, as I always do every time I come on, I have to go through the 12 signs of the zodiac in order for you to understand that. So let's just tear through it. Let's do that, and then we can get into like questions and stuff. So the first sign I talk about is Aquarius, which is represented by the man with the water pitcher. So it's literally a constellation of a man pouring out water from a water pitcher. So anytime you hear the word spring or flood or man or son of man, because it's the sign of the man, where Virgo is the woman sign, or anytime you hear baptism or running water, they're talking about Aquarius. Then Pisces is the sign of the 2 fish in the water. Then Aries is the ram. And in Aries, you have March 21st, which is the spring equinox. It's a 12-hour day, 12-hour night. It's also the Passover for the Jewish people, or when God passes over Egypt and kills all the firstborn Egyptian sons, which is the 10th plague, and for Moses to let the Jews out of Egypt. In astrotheology, the Passover is March 21st, the day the sun literally passes over the equator and on its way back to its height in the summer solstice. In Christianity, the passing over is changed, and it's called the resurrection of God's Son. See, Passover and Easter are both in Aries. And Aries, the Jewish people were the people of Aries during the time, as we're the people of Aquarius now. So that's why the Jews blew the ram's horn towards the sky, because it's Aries worship. Then Taurus is the bull. And when you look in the sky and see Taurus during the season where it's supposed to be, you know that you need to put the plow on the bull so that you could plant the seeds so you can harvest them in Virgo and Libra. Then Gemini is the twins. It's Castor and Pollux Troy, whose sister was Helen of Troy. It's the story of Achilles. Then Cancer is the crab, and it's the sideways moving creature. And the reason it's a sideways moving creature is because in Cancer, the sun literally moves sideways for 3 days. Starting on December 25th, the sun rises a degree on its axis, and it continues to rise an additional degree on its axis until it hits June 21st. Then for 3 days, it rises to the same degree, hence moving sideways. Then on June...
Froze up a little, Micah.
Hello?
Yeah, you froze up. But you were just talking about...
What was the last thing you heard?
You were talking about, we were in June, and it was just 2 seconds that we lost, the last sentence.
Okay, June 21st, for 3 days, it walks sideways. It stays at that height. And then on June 25th, it drops a degree. And then it lowers a degree every single day until December 21st, which is the winter solstice, which is the longest night of the year. And it's when basically they said that the sun was dead because the sun doesn't even rise on its axis. And then for 3 days after that, just like in June, it doesn't rise on its axis. So they used to say God's sun was dead for 3 days. And then on December 25th, the sun comes back to life. That's why all the ancient gods are celebrated on December 25th. Now, the next sign is Leo, who's the king. He's the lion. He's the king of the jungle. The ruling planet of Leo is actually the sun. So when they're talking about the kingdom of heaven on earth, they're talking about the sun in Leo, because when the sun's in Leo, the sun rules Leo. And it's actually the only sign that is ruled by the sun. Then Virgo is the woman holding the wheat stalk. And remember before when you said that you plant in Taurus? Well, basically the virgins would cultivate the wheat in Virgo in order to make the bread for the year. So anytime you hear woman or wheat or grain or chaff or seed or things of that nature, that's all Virgo. Or barley, for example. Then Libra is the justice. It's the scales, it's the balance, it's the just one. And the reason it's the justice is because it judges God's sun as it passes over the fall equinox and begins its descent into winter, into cold, into death, like I explained. And it's also, so anytime you hear justice or judgment or the judge or the just one, they're talking about Libra. Libra is also wine season. So anytime you hear grapes or vineyard or vine, they're talking about Libra. It's also olive season. So anytime you're talking about like the Mount of Olives, Jesus going to the Mount of Olives, it's a metaphor for Libra. Okay, so you have Virgo the bread and Libra the wine. The bread and the wine are the symbols of Christianity. Then Scorpio is the scorpion, and he's the betrayer. When a scorpion bites you, it leaves an imprint in your skin that looks like a pair of lips. It's where the mafia gets the kiss of death from. So basically, if you pull the scorpion off you after it stung you, it looks like it kissed you, but it's full of poison. So that's the metaphor. And it's why Jesus was betrayed by Judas with a kiss. It's because Judas represents Scorpio, the betrayer, and Judas was the betrayer. And the sun is judged in Libra and betrayed in Scorpio, and finally in Sagittarius. This is where the bow and the arrow shoot the sun and inflict further punishment on the sun. And we went over that in Sagittarius. You have December 21st, which is when the sun dies. So whenever you're talking about death in the Bible, it's metaphorically talking about December 21st in Sagittarius, because that's the day of death. And then finally, Capricorn is the goat because he likes to climb the mountain. The goat climbs the mountain better than anyone.
We love the goat climbing the mountain. You just froze up on the goat climbing the mountain. So.
Oh yeah, because the goat climbs up the mountain. And if you look at the zodiac wheel, Capricorn is at the bottom of the wheel, and if you look at the sun climbing a degree a day on its axis, it climbs. So that's basically a metaphor.
So we take these metaphors.
So those are the 12 signs.
We take the 12 sign metaphors that you just went over, and then you literally read Revelations, and you use those metaphors. How? I mean, because if you're just going to use the metaphors to put in the signs, Libra, Virgo, Sagittarius, Aquarius, how do you get a story from that? Walk us through it.
All right, I'll read you John's vision of Christ, and I'll tell you how this works. It says, I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And if I freeze up, please let me know right away.
Yeah.
I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, I saw 7 gold lampstands. And among the lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet, and with a golden sash around his chest. The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like a blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in the furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and coming out of his mouth was a sharp double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in its brilliance. So it said, amongst the lampstand was someone like the Son of Man. Well, I explained to you that the Son of Man was Aquarius.
Yeah.
Okay? With a golden sash around his chest. Okay? So the sun is the golden sash. The sun is gold. So they're talking about the sun being an Aquarius. The hair on his head was white like wool, which comes from a sheep or a ram, which references Aries. His eyes were like a blazing fire. So now it's talking about the blazing sun in Aries. His voice was like the sound of rushing waters. And I mentioned that rushing waters are Aquarius. In his right hand, he held 7 stars. And this is literally speaking of the Pleiades. You're familiar with the 7 sisters, the 7 stars known as the Pleiades?
Yes.
I'm not saying every time they mention 7, they're talking about that. But when they mention 7 stars, that's what they're talking about. So you're supposed to read this literally, as they tell you. They tell you you're supposed to read this literally, and this is literally going to happen. However, if you look into deeper, okay, with the code that I just gave you, basically, you'll find that all it is just celestial hidden metaphors. Okay, we'll get into that, and it'll get deeper. For example, Revelation 4:7. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. Okay, so the first living creature was like a lion. That's Leo. The second was like an ox. That's Taurus. The third had a face like a man. That's Aquarius, the sign of the man. And the fourth was like a flying eagle. Now,
Froze up on eagle. And from what I know, there's no eagle in astrology. Is there?
No, there is an eagle, which is the Latin name for eagle. However, the eagle in astrology, the scorpion evolves into the eagle. See, the scorpion is the belly crawling creature. It's the lowest form of life on earth. Okay. And because it crawls on its belly, okay, God commands the snake to crawl on his belly as punishment for the deception in the Garden of Eden. So if you crawl on your belly, you're the lowest form of life on earth. However, in astrology, the scorpion evolves and becomes the eagle, which is the highest flying creature on earth. Then once it becomes the eagle, it evolves one more time again and becomes the phoenix. And the story of the phoenix is basically the story of Jesus as the son, S-U-N, of God. Basically, it's a flaming fire that dies and is reborn from itself, which is what Jesus basically did. Now, the interesting thing, too, is if you take Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpio from this passage, those are the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. So when you have the zodiac wheel and you connect the solstices and the equinox, it makes a perfect cross. Okay, that's the cross of God's son that Jesus lives and dies on. That's the cross to bear. Okay, these make an X like this through it. So it's a perfect celestial alignment. Okay, so that's why they did it this way. And it was really simple. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. The fourth was like a flying eagle. If you took that on face value, you would just see animals. But if you understand the stars and the constellations, you realize this is telling you a pattern in the sky.
So Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, and Scorpion form the cross.
No, they form the X through the cross.
Oh.
They're the 4 fixed signs.
So the X through the cross, what does that represent?
It doesn't, it's just a pattern. It's just a fixed pattern. See, they selected these on purpose because these are the 4 fixed signs. You know, you have cardinal signs, mutable signs, fixed signs. I'm not going to get too much into that with Aquarius.
No, but
but these are the 4 fixed.
Yeah, I've just been doing some videos on the cosmic catastrophe wheel, which is directly connected to the Yuga. The Yuga cycle is the astrological wheel, which represents 26,000 years as we traverse through the cosmos every cycle. And within that cycle, there's
Right.
a cross, the same cross that goes north, south, east, west. And it is the flexure
Hmm.
point when cosmic catastrophes happen on Earth. It's when great floods happen. It's when ice
Right.
ages happen. So it seems to me that
Oh, I
initial,
forgot. Yeah, you're big on that. I
yeah.
forgot. Yeah, I do
So
remember that. Yes. Yes.
it seems like me the Bible and
So
the Book
these
of
are, yeah,
Revelations might be encoding this information.
it's possible, but as I continue to go, you'll see how it's slightly different.
Okay, let's do it.
If you want me to let's do it. Okay. Revelation 5:5. Then one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. See, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has triumphed. He is able to open the scroll and the seven seals." This mentions that Jesus Christ, the Son, S-U-N of God, the Son in the sky, who's known as the Lion of Judah when in Leo. See, when the sun is in Aquarius, Jesus is known as the Son of Man. When the sun is in Pisces, he's known as the Fisherman of Men. When the sun is in Aries, the Ram, he's known as the Lamb of God. When the sun is in Leo, he's known as the Lion of Judah. When the sun is in Virgo, he's born of a virgin and he's called the Bread of Life. I told you Virgo is the virgin with the wheat stalk. When he's in Libra, he's known as the Just One. You see how this plays out, the metaphors for the zodiac?
Yeah, but so what's the purpose of the narrative?
The purpose of the narrative is basically this. 4,000 years ago, okay, when the Bible was written, they didn't have, we take for granted that we have clocks and smartwatches and calendars. They didn't have that. They had to come up with their own. They didn't know if it was going to snow in a week. Okay, they barely knew how to tell time. And the sun tells the hour of the day. The moon tells the day of the month, and then the zodiac wheel tells the month of the year. And they studied this. It's a perfect calendar. And they studied this. Like, you had to know when it was Taurus season, when you saw Taurus in the sky, that was when you had to plant, because then it was going to rain and your crops were going to grow. If you didn't plant in Taurus or you didn't pay attention to that, you were going to starve at the end of the year. Okay, you had to know when winter was coming.
Yeah, well,
You had to know all this stuff.
usually when it gets cold, I know that winter's coming, and we call it fall.
Right, but but the thing is in fall, you also needed to know when to harvest the grapes, and this calendar used to tell you that. Also, it's not entirely, that's not entirely true, because you can have a cold day out of nowhere. That doesn't mean winter's coming.
Yeah, true that. Now these people back then were agrarian, so they're literally creating all their food, something that doesn't happen today, which is why in a grid down scenario, our planet is doomed. Everyone's just going to starve to death because we are useless eaters, and that's how they've bred us.
Right.
My question is this. Okay, there is definitely a narrative in the Bible. When you're reading the stories, they are stories. But when you look deeper, like you're saying, and you use astrology, there is a bigger picture. Now, is the bigger picture of astrology related to the story in any way? Or is the story completely unrelated and simply
that's
created for
that's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Gotcha. The astrology that's hidden was, okay, so you got to understand, as original Christians, before the year 325 AD, when Constantine united everyone under literal Christianity, and then the Crusades, and then they raped and pillaged, and they converted everyone to believe it literally, the original Christians were known as Helionostics, which means, in Greek, Helios is sun, and Gnosis means knowers. They were sun worshippers. They knew this. They worshiped the sun. Everything else is just story. And the purpose of the Bible is just basically to encode this astrology, because this was the hidden knowledge. This was the hidden knowledge that they wanted to basically keep from people. Okay, this was how they knew what stars. As I'm going to keep reading passages, you're going to see how it mentions the stars more accurately. But the purpose of it is basically to map out your celestial body. Okay, and it was considered the most sacred information. Okay, because basically, it was considered the most sacred information. And what do you do with sacred information? The elites hide it or they pervert it.
Yeah.
That's what they basically do.
Okay, so there's these encoded messages, and we're going to read some more. Are they telling us something, or are they
Right.
just describing astrology and encoding it in this book in case we lose astrology?
It's both. It's a
Okay.
combination of both.
Okay. All right, let's do
It's a
it.
combination of both. Revelation 6:1, for example. I watched as the Lamb opened the first of the seven seals. Then I heard one of the four living creatures say in a voice like thunder, "Come." The Lamb of God. The Son has opened the first seal while in Aries. And it has to be the first seal is opened in Aries. Do you know why?
No, but
This was encoded. Do you know why it has to be in Aries? It has to be in Aries because Aries is the beginning of the year. Okay, not for us because we have January 1st, which is I believe Capricorn still. That's our beginning of the year. However, the beginning of the ancient year was in Aries. It was the spring. They celebrated it. It was either March 1st or March 21st. They celebrated the beginning of the new year. So the first seal has to open in Aries because it's the first sign. Okay, so that's encoded in there. Revelation 6:2, I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow. That's talking about Sagittarius because it's the rider with the bow and the arrow. Okay? Now, it's important to know that the gospel, you have four horsemen, right? Do you know what the horseman is in the zodiac?
no, but it's probably the cardinal points or one of the crosses.
The horseman is Sagittarius, the man on the horse. Right?
Yeah, but what are the four horsemen then?
Okay, I'm going to explain it to you. Do you remember what happens in Sagittarius? The sun dies. The sun dies on December 21st in Sagittarius. There's four gospels. Jesus dies four times. So he dies in four Sagittariuses. So there's four. That's why it's four. Because there's four gospels and there's four Sagittarius. That's why there has to be four horsemen. Okay? Revelation 6:6. This one is so blatantly obvious. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the four living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages, and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine. Well, the 2 pounds of wheat and the 6 pounds of barley is Virgo, as I've already told you, the virgin with the wheat stalk.
Yeah.
And that's when you harvest that. And do not damage the oil and the wine. Well, I told you that olives and the wine are Libra. So Virgo and Libra, those are neighboring signs. And that's the way they encode things, okay? They're always going to be talking about the opposing sign or the neighboring sign. That's how you know it's a pattern that was put in here.
Wow. So it's literally, now what I'm gleaning, unless you have some deeper insights, is that the Bible and these books are just secret texts to encode the original religion that then was bastardized as Christianity. And they did it like a joke. They
Yes.
mastercrafted these texts in such a way that it was filled with astrological information, and no one knew about it because they're reading it literally. And they're looking for horsemen in the sky and
Yep.
all this nonsense because they're not looking at it correctly.
That's exactly right. That's why Jesus says, for those who have ears to hear and eyes to see. Okay? Because if you see it the right way, you'll get it. Okay? Now, Revelation 7:4, it says, then I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144 from the tribes of Israel. Now, there are sects of Christianity that believe, I think it's the Mormons or the Latter-day Saints, or they might be one and the same. They believe in this, the 144,000. They think that only 144,000 are going to go to heaven. That's how they take it literally. There are 7 chakras. The root, I'm sorry, go on.
Are you going to explain what the 144,000 means?
Yes, right now.
All right.
There are 7 chakras. The root has 4 petals. The sacral has 6. The solar plexus has 10. The heart has 12, and the throat has 16, which equals 48. The third eye chakra is represented by 96 and only has 2 petals because it's 2 times as powerful as the lower chakras. So 48 times 2 equals 96. The crown chakra is 1,000 times more powerful than the lower 6 chakras. When you add the lower 6, you get 96 plus 48 equals 144, and then times that by the crown chakra, okay, and you get your 144,000. So when you activate all your chakras, that's when you get to go to heaven. That's when you get to see God, when your pineal gland explodes.
And in which case you'll still be alive.
Right.
That's crazy. It's crazy. And how many blind people just giving money in that basket and going to those stables? I mean.
Yep. I mean, listen to this one, Revelation 9:7. The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. So horse is Sagittarius. On their heads, they wore something like the crowns of gold. Well, the sun is golden, so they're talking about the sun in Sagittarius. And their faces resembled human faces. So their faces resembled Aquarius, the sign of the man. Their hair was like woman's hair. That's Virgo. And their teeth were like lion's teeth. That's Leo. They had tails with stingers like scorpions. That's Scorpio. You see how this works?
Yeah, I mean it's throughout and prolific. Now, are there sections of Revelations where you can't find any astrology, and maybe there's some information encoded there?
It's pretty much throughout, to be honest with you.
Okay.
It's through and throughout. See, look, I'm an author and I've written stuff that's encoded, you know. But also, you have a storyline. Like, there has to be a story behind this in order to encode it. Okay, that's why the Bible doesn't really make sense if you read it literally. You know, you need apologetics to explain away the inconsistencies and the blatant contradictions in the Bible. But you have to realize is that if you're going to encode something so deeply like this, either that's going to take a little bit out of it, or you're going to lose some out of the original story. You can't have a perfectly clear front level story and a perfectly clear underling story. One of them is going to seem off a little bit, and you're not going to know why. Okay, because you have to include all this information.
Yeah, and a couple other things I'm going to grill you on here. You say that there's 4 Gospels, right? And because we were talking about that. But there are other Gospels that are not included in the Bible that were written.
Right.
So
I've done. I've worked on some of the Gospels, and it's all the same stuff. I've done the book. Did I do the Book of Enoch with you?
You did Enoch, but I'm talking like there's the Book of Ruth and the Book of Thomas. There's lots of Gospels.
It's all the same stuff. I've done the Book of Raziel. I've done the Book of Thomas. I've done the Book of all this. It's all the same stuff. I've even decoded the Enuma Elish, which is the Babylonian creation story, and that is an encoded astrological book too. That has nothing to do with the Bible, the Enuma Elish.
And so the sun worshippers, the Gnostics, how far do they go back? I mean, are there Gnostics back in Sumeria?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the original thing. If you think about it,
Micah, I've been telling everyone, based on my studies, that astrology is the original science that was basically lost after the catastrophe. It was saved by a group of elites, and then it was re-encoded so that we would have that information at this time. But it's still being hidden as the original
that's
science.
True.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It is, and the further we get away from these original people before the year 325, the more literal people take it. Okay, but you have to understand is that the Egyptians were the people of Taurus. We're the people of Aquarius now. We're in Aquarius. The people of Taurus were the Egyptians. And, you know, they had their bulls with their horns, with the sun in between it on the hieroglyphs. They were telling you they were worshiping the sun. You see pictures of Horus with the sun behind his head, like Jesus has the sun behind his head now, because they represent the sun. That's why the sun is always behind their head. And then basically the Egyptians fade, and then the Jewish people come up in the Age of Aries. That's why they blow the ram's horn. That's why they have the lamb's bone on the Passover plate. And then they're the people of Aries, and then they fade. Okay, their numbers go down, and then the Christians come up in Pisces. You have Pisces, the 2 fish. It's why Jesus feeds the masses with 2 fish. on the mount. He feeds them with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. Well, if you take away the 5 from the loaves of bread and you just look at the 2 fish, the 2 fish is Pisces and the bread is Virgo. Those are opposing signs. That's why they wrote it like that. Yeah, Virgo with the wheat stalk. So then the Christians, and then also the Jesus fish, okay, that's the center of the Vesica Pisces. Okay, that's what it looks like. Okay, and then you know what? They're going to start to fade because we're in Aquarius now. Okay, and it has to be a new religion. There has to be, because we're in a new sign. If you follow the pattern that I just laid out, you'll see that.
And it will forevermore be washed away and diluted the further we go. Now, if you believe in the Yuga cycle,
unless we expose this.
Yeah, but if you believe in the Yuga cycle, it's part of the natural progression that we get dumber and lose information, and then we'll eventually, now we're shifting into a more enlightened Yuga. We'll get more enlightened and eventually telepathic, and we'll know the truth once again. Do you believe that something like that is happening?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you think that they're trying to break
Absolutely, we're in the golden age right now.
Yeah.
We're in the golden age right now. Okay, you had the Bronze and the Silver Age. We're in the Golden Age right now. We're in the Age of Aquarius. It's going to be a combination of things, in my opinion. The first is it's going to be an explosion of people who become less religious and just become more spiritual and just make a connection and start to understand this stuff. Then the other thing that's going to happen is because Aquarius is the sign of the man, okay? It's humanity. It's what humanity does. I believe that in this age, there's going to be a merging with machines. I think that's going to be the next religion, to be honest with you. I don't think it's going to be a holy book with a holy savior.
It will be the Borg. Let's keep going.
Should I keep going?
Yeah.
Revelation 12:1. A great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Then another sign appeared in heaven, an enormous red dragon with 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns on its head. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. So a sign appeared. The sun is in Virgo with the moon under her feet. If the sun is in a sign, the moon is directly under it, okay? So basically what they're saying is this. The sun spends 2 hours a day in each zodiac sign. Times 12, we get our 24-hour day clock, okay? If the sun is in Virgo, okay, Virgo is the 8th sign. So times that by 2, that's 1600. It's 1600 o'clock. 8 times 2 is 16, so that's 1600. 1600 is 4 p.m. So Virgo, it's from 4 to 6 p.m. So what you'll find is that in Virgo, you'll find that the sun is still out. So if the sun is out, then the moon is directly under it. Because when the sun is out, the moon is down. When the moon is up, the sun is down. Then she was pregnant, which is another sign towards the virgin birth. Then an enormous red dragon appeared. Okay? The dragon in the sky is the constellation Draco, which is the dragon, whose tail goes from Aries to Sagittarius, or 1/3 of the sky. Its tail swept a third of the stars out of the sky and flung them to earth. This is just poetry.
Yeah.
This is just metaphors. This is not meant to be taken literally. People are literally, the woman with the dragon is a big deal in Christianity. They believe there's going to be a dragon in the sky eating a woman that they're going to be able to see.
When it's clearly them just reiterating over and over again the science of astrology and how to figure it out using metaphors. It's fascinating.
They're much better at using metaphors than we are today. I'll tell you that much.
Now, who is responsible?
Revelation 13.
Who's responsible for writing Revelations?
I couldn't tell you. They give it credit to John.
Yeah.
But I couldn't, like, my work, I couldn't go back in time and tell you.
But it seems like there would have to be a group of people that are sitting down and creating these metaphors. I mean, it's going to take a whole, like an army of people to create this book. And John,
well, the Bible was written over 1,500 years, or at least the Old Testament was written over 1,500 years by hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah, so they knew what they were doing.
They did. That's why you'll find that even the Gnostic texts that were removed, like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Raziel, the Book of Ruth, jubilees, things of that nature. These all have astrotheology in them. They all were written that way.
And they chose the ones they did to get more of a control narrative if you read it literally.
Correct.
Absolutely insane.
I mean, listen to this. Revelation 13:2. The beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and mouth like that of a lion. There's a constellation called Camelopardalis, which is in Gemini. It could reference a camel, Camelos, and a leopard, Pardalis. The giraffe was actually called the camel leopard for a long time. So the beast resembles Camelopardalis, but had the feet of a bear, which is Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, represented by the great bear and her cubs. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking, I immediately got Big Dipper when you said bear.
Yeah. Then I saw a second beast, Revelation 13:11. Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had two horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. Well, the lamb is Aries, and the dragon is Draco. Okay? Then here's this one is so obvious. Revelation 18:13. Excuse me. Cargoes of cinnamon and spice, of incense, myrrh and frankincense, of wine and olive oil. Okay? Libra. Of fine flour and wheat. Virgo. Cattle and sheep. Okay? No, cattle and flour and wheat is Virgo, yes. Cattle and sheep. Cattle is Taurus, and sheep is Aries. Horses and carriages, that's Sagittarius. And human beings sold as slaves, that's Aquarius. It's crazy. And that's the book of Revelation. Okay, do you see just how much it is encoded in there?
Yeah, now I'm wondering if they're not hidden warnings in there where certain things where you're describing the astrology, like Taurus in Draco or something, if that actually corresponds to a physical time in the past or in the future, because you can move these astrological clocks forward and backward and see where the constellations are or whatever. I mean, is there a deeper hidden message in the astrology?
There can be, like, for example, those four signs where it makes the cross through the zodiac wheel, the four fixed signs. You know, for example, it does do that sometimes, but sometimes it's just openly mocking you. It's just telling you, you know, all this food and all these animals. I mean, that's basically what it is. Like, let me read you one thing that I've done before with you. Are you familiar with the book of Job?
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to explain to your fans or your listeners who he was and what his story was? Do you remember?
No, I can't give you specifics on Job. But he didn't see the wheel. That was Ezekiel.
Job was a righteous man. Okay, he was a righteous, pious man who had all these animals and money and food and family. And Satan came up to God and said, if you take that away from him, he's going to curse you. And God said, I don't think he will, but I'll take your bet. They basically made a bet. And he said, you could take away anything you want from him, but you can't take his life. Okay, so little by little, he starts losing everything. And finally, he has almost nothing left. He cries out to God. God replies to him. This is in the book of Job. Okay, this is God's response to him. Okay, the words of God to Job. Job 38:32. He says, can you lead forth the Mazzaroth? God says, can you lead forth the Mazzaroth? It's important to know that the Mazzaroth is the zodiac. It's a straight translation from Hebrew to English. Mazzaroth over time becomes Mazalot, which survives in Judaism today as Mazel Tov, or good fortune from the stars. That's what Mazel Tov comes from. So the Lord's challenge to Job, he says, can you bind the chains of the Pleiades? Can you loosen Orion's belt? Those are obvious metaphors that are openly talking about it. Then he says, can you bring forth the constellation in their seasons or lead out the bear with its cubs? The constellations are the zodiac above. The bear and its cubs are Ursa Major, the Great Bear, and Ursa Minor, part of the Big Dipper. Then he says, who can tip over the water jars of heaven? Well, that's Aquarius, the man with the water pitcher tipping it over. Do you hunt the prey for the lioness and satisfy hunger for the lions? That's Leo. Who provides food for the raven? That's the constellation Corvus, which means raven and borders on Virgo. Do you watch where the doe bears her fawn? Marigo, which means deer, is located in Orion. Who let the wild donkey go free? That's Acellus borealis, meaning donkey, and is located in Cancer. Will the wild ox consent to serve you? That's Taurus. The wings of the ostrich flap joyfully. That's Lambda Achille or Al-Thaliman, which means two ostriches in Arabic. Do you give the horse its strength? It laughs at fear, afraid of nothing. It does not shy away from the sword. The quiver rattles against its side along with the flashing spear and lance. That's Sagittarius with the bow and the arrow. Does the eagle soar at your command and build its nest on high? That's Aquila, which is the Latin name for eagle and is a constellation a few degrees above the celestial equator. Then he finally says, can you pull in Leviathan with a fish hook? And Leviathan was the old-time fish god. So that's Pisces. So do you see how it's supposed to be God's words, and he's supposedly talking about all these animals, but he's really talking about the constellations? You see how long that passage was? And it was literally just about the stars.
And he was almost covering all of astrology in his one response.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So is it specifically in books like Job, in the Bible, is it specifically when the word of God is used that it's the metaphor for astrotheology? Or is there other, in actual text, is there other metaphors in there? Or is it only the word of God?
There's other. No. It's throughout. It's not just the word of God. This just happened to be the word of God.
Right.
It's both.
Yeah.
It's when God speaks.
He covered quite a bit.
Other people speak.
Yeah, that's amazing. But when God speaks, he seems to throw out a lot of metaphors.
Right. He does. Yeah. Isn't this, I mean, it's deep if you think about it. But like I mentioned, when you write a story, if you're going to encode it and you're going to encode patterns and symbolism in the story, something's going to give. Either your symbolism is going to be off or your original storyline, which is how you're supposed to read the Bible according to Christians, is going to be off. And it is off. The way you read it, the Bible's weird. You know, you have talking donkeys and shit like that. They don't realize that the donkey is Acellus borealis, you know, the donkey star. It's wild. You know, they talk about the twins. You know, they talk about in my first book, I lie out every mention of the zodiac in the Bible.
Well, what I find fascinating, and we should wrap it up here soon, is this, and I've been thinking about this a lot over the last few decades, is that astrological signs and constellations, the words and terms used are universal. Native cultures use the same terminology as foreign worlds. And these aren't recent terms. They go back as far as you can possibly go into written text. They're talking about the same exact constellations.
It predates that.
I mean, it's amazing.
Diamond, it predates that. Okay, have you heard of the Lascaux caves before in France?
Absolutely, they've got astrology in them.
The Lascaux caves were dated at 40,000 years old.
Exactly.
And they had drawings of all these constellations. And what they did was they carbon dated it, and then they brought in an astronomer with a computer, and they rewound the sky back to show what it looked like 40,000 years ago. They superimposed it over the wall, and where they drew the bull was where Taurus was. Where they drew the horse is where Sagittarius was. We've known about the zodiac for 40,000 years. This is supposedly when we're still on the freaking food chain.
Dude, and it just didn't come to us 40,000 years ago where we could draw amazing paintings in a cave. So it had to be developed tens of thousands of years prior to that, because you can only observe this if you're here for 26,000 years to see the entire procession of the equinoxes, to understand that everything shifts.
Exactly.
So, I mean, this could go back 100,000 years. This is just mind-blowing.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
This is why I say astrology is the oldest and most important science.
Yeah, and I concur, especially after this podcast. Guys, if you want to find Micah Dank, he's all over the place. He's on Twitter. He's on Facebook. Micah Dank Into the Rabbit Hole. He's got 5 books, soon to be 6, and maybe 7 books. It's the Beneath the Veil Into the Rabbit Hole series. And go get them on Amazon. They're cheap. They're pretty cheap.
And you can reach out.
Go ahead.
Reach out to me on the platforms. You can reach out to me on Facebook and join my Facebook group. If you reach out to me, we'll definitely have a conversation. And what I can do is, if you don't want to go through Bezos, I'm totally fine with that. You could basically reach out to me, and I'll autograph copies and send them to you. I sell a lot of autographed copies. But if you want to go through Amazon, I'm fine. But reach out to me. Follow me on these platforms. On Twitter, I'm real Mr. Dank. And I'm usually on Twitter the most, to be honest with you.
Cool. Well, it's been a pleasure, Micah. Get some sleep. You're over on the East Coast, and we will talk to you soon. And that is definitely a boom.
Thanks, bud.
Peace.
Peace.